In a quiet suburban neighborhood, where tree-lined streets and manicured lawns created an illusion of serenity, Alex Carter had finally found what they thought was their perfect home. It wasn't extravagant or luxurious, but it had everything Alex needed. 3 cozy bedrooms for their 2 kids, a small backyard where the children could play soccer, and a driveway wide enough to park their car without any hassle. For Alex, who worked long hours as a graphic designer while juggling parenting duties, this house represented stability, a place where their family could settle down and create happy memories. The neighborhood seemed idyllic at first glance. Neighbors exchanged polite waves in the mornings, kids rode bicycles on the sidewalks, and weekend barbecues occasionally filled the air with the smell of grilled burgers. But beneath this picturesque exterior lurked an undercurrent of tension, one that most residents whispered about behind closed doors. The source of this unease, Karen Whitmore, the self-proclaimed enforcer of the Homeowners Association, HOA. Karen was not your average neighbor. She took her role in the HOA far too seriously, often patrolling the streets like a hawk searching for prey. Whether it was someone's mailbox being painted the wrong shade of blue or a garden gnome placed too close to the sidewalk, nothing escaped Karen's watchful eye. Her obsession with rules, real or imagined, had earned her the nickname HOA Karen among the community. Some people joked that she probably dreamed about bylaws and fines, but no one dared say it to her face. After all, crossing Karen meant endless drama, passive-aggressive letters, and even threats of legal action. Alex had heard rumors about Karen before moving in, but chose to ignore them. They figured that if they kept their head down and followed the rules, they'd be fine. At least, that's what they hoped. Unfortunately, life rarely goes according to plan. Within weeks of settling into their new home, Alex began noticing subtle signs that Karen had taken an interest in them. First, it was a note taped to their front door reminding them to trim their hedges, even though the plants were barely 6 inches tall. Then came another letter complaining about the color of their welcome mat, which apparently clashed with the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. Each message ended with the same ominous warning. Failure to comply would result in penalties imposed by the HOA. At first, Alex brushed off these notes as petty annoyances. They figured Karen was just trying to assert her authority, and they didn't want to give her the satisfaction of reacting. But deep down, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. Little did they know, their quiet life was about to take a dramatic turn, one that would test their patience, resilience, and creativity. What Alex didn't realize yet was how determined Karen could be when she set her sights on someone. To Karen, Alex represented everything she hated. A newcomer who didn't immediately bow to her demands, someone who seemed indifferent to her carefully curated vision of perfection. And so, unbeknownst to Alex, Karen had already begun plotting her next move. It wouldn't be long before the tranquility of their suburban paradise shattered, and Alex found themselves caught in the middle of a battle unlike anything they'd ever experienced. It was a crisp autumn morning when Alex's peaceful existence came crashing down. As they sipped their coffee and prepared to head out for work, something felt off. The usual hum of the neighborhood was replaced by an eerie silence, broken only by the distant chirping of birds. Curious, Alex stepped outside to investigate, and froze in disbelief. Blocking their driveway was a tall wooden fence, freshly installed and stretching across the entire width of their property. It stood like an impenetrable barrier, cutting off access to their car and effectively trapping them inside their own home. For a moment, Alex thought it might be some sort of prank or misunderstanding. But as they approached the fence, they noticed a small sign nailed to one of the posts. In bold letters, it read, *AAVOA, APURUVT, violation of PROPERTUA line ES*. Fury bubbled up inside Alex, but they forced themselves to stay calm. This had Karen's name written all over it. Sure enough, just as Alex was inspecting the fence, Karen Whitmore appeared from her house across the street. Dressed in her signature khakis and polo shirt, She strode toward them with an air of smug satisfaction. Her arms were crossed, and her lips curled into a self-satisfied smirk that made Alex want to scream. "You must have received my letter," Karen said coolly, as if discussing the weather. "Your driveway is encroaching on common property. The HOA voted unanimously to install this fence until you resolve the issue." Alex stared at her, incredulous. "What are you talking about? I bought this land legally. There's no violation here." Karen shrugged dismissively. "Well, according to our records, there is. You'll need to contact the HOA board if you want to dispute it." She paused, tilting her head slightly. "But I wouldn't hold my breath. Rules are rules, Alex." The audacity of her tone left Alex speechless. How could Karen justify such an extreme measure without solid evidence? Even worse, how could anyone claim that Alex's driveway, a feature that had been there long before they moved in, was suddenly illegal? It didn't make sense. Yet, standing face to face with Karen, Alex realized this wasn't about logic or fairness. This was personal. As the day wore on, frustration turned into desperation. With the fence blocking their driveway, Alex couldn't leave for work or take their kids to school. They tried calling friends and family for help, but towing their car through the narrow yard proved impractical. Meanwhile, Karen seemed unfazed, going about her day as though nothing unusual had happened. When Alex confronted her again later that afternoon, demanding answers, Karen simply repeated her earlier statement: "Rules are rules." The absurdity of the situation gnawed at Alex. What kind of person installs a fence across someone else's driveway? And why go to such lengths over something so trivial? The more Alex thought about it, the clearer it became. Karen wasn't enforcing rules. She was exerting control. To her, Alex represented a challenge, a neighbor who refused to bow to her authority. And this was her way of asserting dominance. That night, as Alex sat in their dimly lit living room staring at the offending fence, they vowed not to let Karen win. Something had to give, whether it meant fighting back legally, rallying support from other neighbors, or finding another creative solution. Alex knew they couldn't sit idly by while Karen destroyed their life. Little did they know, this bizarre feud was only beginning. And soon, Karen would discover that playing games with the wrong person can have unexpected consequences. The next morning, Alex woke up with a sense of determination they hadn't felt in days. They knew Karen wasn't going to back down anytime soon, and the fence wasn't coming down on its own. If Alex wanted their life back, they needed answers, and fast. That's when they decided to consult a lawyer. After explaining the situation over the phone, Alex met with attorney Lisa Monroe, a sharp and no-nonsense professional known for handling property disputes. Lisa listened carefully as Alex recounted every detail: the sudden appearance of the fence, Karen's smug demeanor, and the vague claims about encroachment. When Alex finished, Lisa nodded thoughtfully. "Let's start by reviewing your property records," she said. "If this is truly your land, we'll find proof." Over the next few days, Alex worked closely with Lisa to gather all the necessary documents: their deed, survey maps, HOA agreements, and anything else that might shed light on the issue. To their relief, the initial findings were promising. According to the official property records, Alex's driveway was well within the boundaries of their land. There was no evidence of any encroachment onto common property, or anyone else's land, for that matter. This revelation gave Alex a much-needed boost of confidence. Armed with this information, Lisa helped Alex draft a formal complaint against Karen and the HOA board. The letter outlined the facts clearly. There was no legal basis for the fence, and its installation violated local zoning laws. Furthermore, Alex argued that Karen's actions amounted to harassment, given the personal nature of the dispute. Alongside the complaint, Alex included copies of the relevant documents and demanded the immediate removal of the fence. But Karen didn't take the challenge lying down. Within hours of receiving the letter, she sprang into action. Flyers began appearing on neighbors' doors overnight, each one accusing Alex of being difficult and disruptive. One flyer even claimed that Alex had ignored multiple warnings from the HOA and was now trying to bully innocent homeowners. It was classic Karen, twisting the truth to paint herself as the victim. To make matters worse, Karen called an emergency HOA meeting to discuss the situation. She stood at the front of the room, speaking passionately about how Alex's refusal to comply with the rules threatened the integrity of the entire neighborhood. Her words swayed some of the more impressionable members, leaving Alex feeling isolated and outnumbered. A few neighbors who had initially seemed friendly now avoided eye contact whenever Alex passed by. Despite the mounting pressure, Alex refused to give up. With Lisa's guidance, they filed additional paperwork with the city, highlighting how the fence violated local ordinances regarding access to private property. They also reached out to other neighbors privately, sharing copies of the property records and explaining their side of the story. Slowly but surely, a small group of residents began to see through Karen's manipulative tactics. Some even admitted that they'd grown tired of her constant meddling and were secretly rooting for Alex. Still, the battle was far from over. The fence remained firmly in place, and Karen showed no signs of backing down. Frustrated but undeterred, Alex realized they needed a bigger plan, a way to hit Karen where it hurt most. As they brainstormed ideas late one night, flipping through old property records sent by Lisa, something unusual caught their eye. At first glance, it seemed like just another boring document. But as Alex read further, their hearts skipped a beat. Could it be possible? Was this real? Little did Alex know, this discovery would change everything. Not just for them, but for Karen too. As Alex pored over the stack of documents late one evening, their eyes landed on something that made their breath catch in their throat. Buried deep within decades-old property records was a detail so unexpected, so unbelievable, that it took them a moment to fully process what they were reading. According to the paperwork, the land beneath Karen's house, the very foundation her home was built on, was technically part of Alex's property. At first, Alex thought it had to be a mistake. How could something like this slip through the cracks? They double-checked the document, cross-referencing it with their deed and other records. But the more they looked, the clearer it became. Years ago, when the neighborhood was first developed, the original owner of Alex's parcel had only sold off portions of their land piecemeal. Somehow, the plot where Karen's house now stood had never been officially transferred to anyone else. It still belonged to Alex, or rather, to whoever inherited Alex's property rights. A slow smile spread across Alex's face as the implication sank in. This wasn't just a minor detail. It was a game changer. For all Karen's talk about rules and boundaries, she was living on land that didn't legally belong to her. The irony was almost poetic. Here she was, accusing Alex of violating property lines, while unknowingly building her entire life on stolen ground. The next morning, Alex called attorney Lisa Monroe to share the discovery. At first, Lisa sounded skeptical, but after reviewing the documents herself, her tone shifted to excitement. "This is huge," she said. "If these records are accurate, and I have no reason to doubt them, you have significant leverage here. You own the land under her house, Alex. That gives you the upper hand." With Lisa's help, Alex decided to use this newfound advantage strategically. Instead of immediately confronting Karen, they prepared a formal notice outlining their claim. The letter explained the situation clearly. Unless Karen agreed to remove the fence blocking Alex's driveway and issue a public apology, Alex would exercise their legal right as the rightful owner of the land beneath her home. In simpler terms, Karen would either have to cooperate or risk losing the place she called home. When the certified letter arrived at Karen's doorstep, Alex couldn't help but feel a thrill of satisfaction. For once, the tables had turned. Now it was Karen who would have to deal with the stress and uncertainty of someone questioning her ownership. And unlike Karen's baseless accusations against Alex, this claim was backed by solid evidence. Still, Alex knew better than to underestimate Karen. She was stubborn, prideful, and unlikely to admit defeat easily. When Karen finally opened the letter, Alex imagined her reaction. The widening eyes, the trembling hands, the rush of panic as she realized the magnitude of the situation. Would she try to deny it, or would she lash out, accusing Alex of fabricating the whole thing? Whatever Karen's response might be, Alex felt a renewed sense of hope. For weeks, they'd been fighting an uphill battle, constantly on the defensive. But now, for the first time, they held the power. This discovery wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. And if Karen refused to see reason, Alex was ready to take things to the next level. After all, sometimes the best way to teach someone a lesson is to show them exactly how it feels to lose control. The day after sending the certified letter, Alex waited anxiously for Karen's response. It didn't take long. By mid-morning, Karen stormed across the street, her face flushed with anger and disbelief. She marched straight to Alex's front door, pounding on it so hard that the sound echoed through the house. When Alex opened the door, they were met with a furious glare. "This is ridiculous," Karen spat, waving the letter in Alex's face. "You expect me to believe you own the land under my house? That's absurd. You're just trying to scare me." Alex crossed their arms, meeting Karen's gaze calmly. "It's not about what I expect you to believe, Karen. It's about what the documents say. And according to them, the land your house sits on belongs to me. If you don't think it's true, feel free to check the records yourself." For a moment, Karen looked shaken, but then her expression hardened again, and she shook her head dismissively. "This is nonsense. You're bluffing. There's no way something like this could have happened without anyone noticing." Alex shrugged, keeping their tone even. "Believe what you want, Karen, but if you won't remove the fence and apologize, I'll have no choice but to move forward with selling the land under your house. Let's see how easy it is for you to sell your home when buyers find out you don't actually own the land it's built on." Karen's mouth dropped open, but no words came out. For the first time since their feud began, Alex saw a crack in her confident facade. The idea of losing control over her precious property clearly terrified her. Still, pride got the better of her, and she quickly recovered, narrowing her eyes at Alex. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed. "Do you know how much trouble you'd cause for the neighborhood? Everyone will side with me." Alex smiled faintly, unbothered by her threats. "That's your call, Karen. But remember, it's not my fault you ignored the rules this time. You brought this on yourself." With nothing left to say, Karen spun around and marched back to her house, slamming her front door behind her. Alex watched her go, feeling a mix of satisfaction and relief. They knew Karen wouldn't give up easily, but they also knew the ball was finally in their court. Over the next few days, Alex worked closely with attorney Lisa Monroe to prepare for the next step, putting the land beneath Karen's house up for sale. They filed all the necessary paperwork with the local government to ensure everything was above board. Once the listing went live, potential buyers would be able to tour the property, not to inspect Karen's house, but to evaluate the land itself. Technically, Alex wasn't selling the structure. They were selling the ground it stood on. Legally, it was airtight. When news of the impending sale reached Karen, her reaction was exactly what Alex expected: panic. She called emergency HOA meetings, sent frantic emails to neighbors, and even hired her own lawyer to challenge the claim. But every attempt to discredit Alex fell flat. The documents were undeniable, and Karen had no legal leg to stand on. As word spread through the neighborhood, curiosity turned into chaos. Reporters from local newspapers caught wind of the bizarre story and descended on the quiet suburb, eager to cover the feud between Alex and Karen. Cameras flashed as strangers wandered onto Karen's lawn, inspecting the land and speculating about its future. Her once pristine yard became a circus, with people pointing at her house and whispering about the legal drama unfolding around it. Humiliated and cornered, Karen tried one last desperate move. She offered to negotiate. Through her lawyer, she proposed removing the fence and dropping all charges, if Alex agreed to drop their claim to the land. But Alex refused to budge unless Karen issued a public apology and paid for the damages caused by the fence. The stalemate continued, pushing Karen closer to the edge. For Alex, watching Karen squirm was both satisfying and surreal. What started as an act of self-defense had become a lesson in standing up to bullies and proving that sometimes justice has a way of finding its own path. With Karen refusing to meet their terms, Alex decided it was time to take the next step. The listing for the land beneath Karen's house went live, and almost immediately, the neighborhood and beyond erupted into chaos. News of the sale spread like wildfire, drawing attention from local media outlets and curious onlookers. Reporters flocked to the quiet suburban street, eager to cover the bizarre feud between Alex and Karen. What started as a personal dispute had now become a spectacle that everyone wanted to witness. Potential buyers began arriving daily to tour the property. They weren't interested in Karen's house itself. Instead, they inspected the land underneath it, measuring dimensions, taking notes, and discussing its value. Some came with genuine interest in developing the plot, while others simply wanted to gawk at the drama unfolding before their eyes. For Karen, this intrusion was unbearable. Her once pristine yard became a parade ground for strangers trampling her grass, snapping photos, and speculating about her fate. Karen tried everything she could think of to regain control. She posted signs around her yard warning people to stay off her property, but since the land technically belonged to Alex, those warnings carried no weight. She called the police multiple times, claiming trespassing, only to be told there was nothing illegal about showing the land to prospective buyers. Each failed attempt left her more frustrated and desperate than the last. As the days passed, Karen's behavior grew increasingly erratic. Neighbors reported hearing her yelling late at night, pacing back and forth in her living room. Her meticulously maintained garden began to show signs of neglect, with weeds sprouting where flowers used to bloom. Even her trademark put-together appearance faltered. She appeared disheveled during HOA meetings, her usual air of superiority replaced by visible anxiety. For Alex, watching Karen unravel was both satisfying and surreal. While they hadn't set out to humiliate her, there was a certain poetic justice in seeing someone who thrived on control lose it entirely. Still, Alex remained focused on their goal, resolving the situation fairly and putting an end to the harassment. They made it clear through their lawyer that if Karen agreed to remove the fence, issue a public apology, and compensate them for damages, the sale would be halted. But Karen, stubborn as ever, refused to budge. That changed one rainy afternoon when Karen showed up unexpectedly at Alex's doorstep. Gone was the smug woman who had installed the fence without hesitation. In her place stood a visibly shaken individual, drenched from the rain and clutching a soggy envelope. Without waiting to be invited inside, Karen blurted out, "I'll do it. I'll take down the fence and apologize. Just stop this madness." Alex studied her carefully, noting the exhaustion in her voice and the defeat in her posture. After a long pause, they nodded. "Okay, Karen, here's what needs to happen. You'll remove the fence by the end of the week, pay for all associated costs, including my legal fees, and write a formal letter apologizing to me and the neighborhood for your actions. If you agree to these terms, I'll halt the sale." Karen hesitated for a moment, clearly torn between her pride and the reality of her predicament. Finally, she exhaled sharply and muttered, "Fine, whatever you want." With the agreement reached, Alex felt a wave of relief wash over them. It wasn't just about winning or proving a point. It was about restoring peace to their life and standing up against injustice. As Karen turned to leave, Alex called after her, "And Karen, next time, maybe try talking to people instead of building fences." Karen didn't respond, but the look on her face said enough. Defeated, humiliated, and stripped of her authority, she walked away, leaving behind a trail of wet footprints on Alex's porch. For the first time in weeks, Alex allowed themselves to smile, not because they had crushed Karen, but because they had reclaimed their dignity and proven that even the most impossible situations can be resolved with creativity, perseverance, and a little bit of leverage. The following days brought a sense of calm that the neighborhood hadn't felt in weeks. True to her word, Karen had the fence removed within the agreed time frame, and Alex's driveway was finally accessible again. The sight of the dismantled barrier felt like a weight lifting off everyone's shoulders, especially Alex. For the first time since the ordeal began, they could walk out of their house without being reminded of Karen's overreach. Karen also followed through on the other conditions of the agreement. She wrote a formal apology letter, which Alex shared with the HOA board and posted in the community newsletter. In it, she admitted to acting impulsively and acknowledged the harm her actions had caused. While some neighbors suspected the apology was less sincere and more a product of desperation, no one argued with the outcome. The infamous HOA Karen had been humbled, and the neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief. But perhaps the most surprising development came when Karen announced her resignation from the HOA board. At an emergency meeting, she cited personal reasons for stepping down, but avoided eye contact with anyone as she spoke. Her voice lacked its usual confidence, and when the meeting ended, she hurried out of the room without lingering to chat. Within weeks, rumors circulated that Karen and her family were planning to move away entirely. Whether this decision stemmed from embarrassment, financial strain, or simply wanting a fresh start, no one knew for sure. And frankly, few cared. For Alex, life slowly returned to normal, or at least as close to normal as it could get after such an extraordinary experience. Their kids were thrilled to have unrestricted access to the driveway again, and Alex found themselves smiling more often, enjoying the newfound peace. More importantly, they gained a deeper appreciation for standing up for themselves and refusing to let bullies dictate their life. The ordeal had tested their patience and resilience, but it also taught them that sometimes fighting back creatively can yield results far beyond what you initially imagined. The neighborhood, too, underwent a subtle transformation. With Karen gone, the oppressive atmosphere she had created dissipated. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down out of fear of crossing her began reconnecting, organizing casual gatherings, and even reviving long-forgotten traditions like block parties. Some residents approached Alex privately to thank them for standing up to Karen, admitting they'd always been intimidated by her but didn't know how to push back. In a strange way, Alex's battle against Karen had united the community, fostering a spirit of cooperation and mutual respect. As for the land beneath Karen's house, Alex decided not to pursue selling it, at least for now. Instead, they signed over temporary usage rights to Karen, allowing her to stay in her home while paying a modest annual fee. It was a compromise that ensured closure for both parties without dragging the drama out further. Plus, Alex figured, having that leverage in reserve might come in handy if Karen ever tried to cause trouble again. Looking back on everything, Alex couldn't help but marvel at how drastically their life had changed in just a few short weeks. What started as a frustrating conflict over a driveway had spiraled into a David and Goliath-style showdown, pitting an ordinary homeowner against the neighborhood tyrant. And yet, against all odds, Alex had emerged victorious, not through brute force, but through cleverness, determination, and a little bit of luck. On quiet evenings, as Alex sat on their porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, they reflected on the lessons learned. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes challenges arise that test your limits. But standing up for yourself, even when the odds seem stacked against you, can lead to outcomes you never imagined possible. As for Karen, Alex hoped she would take this experience as an opportunity to grow and reflect. After all, everyone deserves a second chance. And so, the suburban neighborhood returned to its peaceful rhythm, forever changed by the tale of Alex and Karen. A story that proved even the smallest acts of courage can ripple outward, transforming lives in ways no one could have foreseen.